All right, today we are diving into one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs of our time. It's all about an AI that managed to crack a 50-year-old puzzle in biology, and it's completely changing how we understand life itself. Just imagine for a second, what if you could see the exact three-dimensional blueprint for every single tiny machine that keeps you alive and running? Well, that's the world we are now stepping into, all thanks to an AI called AlphaFold. And those tiny machines? They're called proteins. And no, they're not just something you eat. Inside our bodies, they are the little workhorses carrying out the instructions written in our DNA. I mean, everything from digesting your food to fighting off a cold, that's all being done by proteins. But here's the catch. There was a huge problem. To understand what a protein does, you absolutely have to know its 3D shape. And for decades, figuring that out was like trying to solve a piece of origami that was impossibly complex. You see, proteins start out as just these long, floppy strings of amino acids, but their real power, their magic, comes from how they fold up into a very specific, very intricate 3D shape. That shape is its function. Get the fold wrong, even slightly, and you can end up with diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. So if we can know the shape, we can finally understand the job it's supposed to do. And this brought scientists to one of biology's greatest mysteries, the protein folding problem. For half a century, the big question was, can we look at that simple string of amino acids and predict its final, complex 3D shape? I mean, doing it in the lab with X-rays and microscopes was just painfully slow and super expensive. We're talking years of work for just a single protein. So why not just use a computer to figure it out? Well, for the longest time, that seemed completely impossible. And the reason why has a name: Levinthal's paradox. Okay. Get ready for this because the scale of this problem is just mind-bending. A typical protein could theoretically fold into 10 to the power of 300 different shapes. That's a 1 with 300 zeros after it. That number is bigger than the number of atoms in the entire known universe. Trying to have a computer check every single possibility would literally take longer than the universe has existed. And yet, inside our bodies, this happens in microseconds. So for decades, progress just kind of crawled along. But then, an AI company decided to take a shot at this impossible problem. And they did it in the ultimate scientific showdown. That showdown is a competition called CASP. You can pretty much think of it as the Olympics for protein folding. Every 2 years, research groups from all over the world are given a list of proteins, and they have to predict the structure blind. They don't have the answer key. It is the ultimate test of who's got the best method. And for years, the progress at CASP was, slow but steady. Then in 2018, DeepMind's first version of AlphaFold showed up and made some serious waves. It was a big leap forward, but it wasn't the final answer. But then, 2 years later, at CASP 14, AlphaFold 2 arrived, and it didn't just win. It basically blew the competition out of the water and changed the game forever. The results were just staggering. The next best method had an error of almost 3 angstroms. AlphaFold 2 came in with an error of less than 1 angstrom. We're talking about a level of precision that's down to the width of a single atom. It was so ridiculously accurate that it matched the results you'd get from those slow, expensive lab methods. Just like that, the impossible problem was, well, for the most part, solved. So the big question is, how on earth did it do it? Well, it wasn't about trying to brute force that 10 to the 300 number. It was about learning the deep, hidden language of how proteins fold. Okay, so here's the simplified version. First, AlphaFold looks at thousands of different species and sees how a protein has evolved over time. It finds amino acids that always change together, which is a huge clue that they're probably touching in the final 3D shape. Then, its AI brain, called an Evoformer, uses those clues to figure out the geometric rules. From there, it builds an initial 3D model, and then, and this is the cool part, it feeds that model back into the system to refine it over and over until it's super confident in the final answer. The breakthrough was so massive, so profound, that the scientific community basically came to a consensus. The structure prediction part of the protein folding problem, it had finally been answered. But honestly, solving the problem is just the beginning of the story. The really exciting part is what happened next, when this incredible power was unleashed and given to scientists all over the world. And this is just amazing. DeepMind didn't lock this technology away. They made a free public database of protein structures, and the impact was just immediate and explosive. Get this, a single AI program generated more protein structures in about a year than all of humanity had managed to figure out in the last 50 years combined. We went from about 180,000 known structures to over 200 million. And scientists are putting this data to incredible use, with over a third of the research focusing directly on fighting human diseases. And what are they doing with it? Well, pretty much everything. For the first time, researchers can see exactly where a genetic mutation sits on a protein, helping them understand rare diseases. Drug designers can find new targets on proteins to create better medicines. And thousands of proteins that were just mysterious lines of code in a database now have a shape, which means we can finally start to figure out what they do. Research on everything from malaria to making better crops is just accelerating like crazy. Of course, technology never, ever stands still. The problem was pretty much solved for single proteins, but what about how they all work together? How do they interact with everything else buzzing around inside a cell? Well, that brings us to the very next chapter, because just this year, DeepMind pulled back the curtain on the next generation, AlphaFold 3. And the leap forward here is enormous. Look, if AlphaFold 2 was like figuring out the exact shape of a single Lego brick, AlphaFold 3 is like being able to see how that brick connects to all the other different pieces in the Lego set, the DNA, the RNA, even the little drug molecules. It's not just predicting parts anymore, it's predicting the entire molecular machine in action. Now, let's be clear, it's not a magic bullet that solves all of biology. It's really good at predicting the final stable shape of a protein, but not the messy process of how it gets there. It also has a tough time with proteins that need to constantly change their shape to work, or with parts that are meant to be floppy and flexible. So the whole problem isn't completely solved, but the biggest, hardest piece of the puzzle definitely is. And all this new power has sparked a really important new debate. See, AlphaFold 2's code was made totally open source, free for anyone to use and build on. AlphaFold 3, on the other hand, is only available through a restricted server. And that's raised some big questions in the scientific world about who gets to control these incredibly powerful new tools. But at the end of the day, what AlphaFold has really done is change the kinds of questions scientists can even ask. For 50 years, the challenge was, what is the structure? Now that's largely taken care of. The new and frankly much more exciting challenge is this. Now that we can finally see the blueprints for all of life's tiny machines, what are the smartest, most creative, and most important things we can start to build with them?